Hey guys, it's Mauler here. Today I'm going to give you a quick rundown on how to properly rig a VTOL unit for C&C Renegade. So the first thing you want to do is load up your model. Here I'm using the F207 that I recently used in the map Air. Just going to expand the window. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your model is centered to exactly 0, 0, 0. And that it's facing the x-axis, which is this, and the model's x is facing the front. X-axis is always the front. Okay, so now the next thing you want to do is you want to create all the bones. I've got my model all ready to go. So first thing you want to do is make the world box. The world box is actually the collision for the players, other vehicles, and anything in game, terrain, etc. Let's just make a simple box that covers the entire model. And then I just want to center that just by right-clicking the bottom arrows. It centers it automatically. As you can see, it's not covering the full model, but I'm going to fix that. Before I do that, I'm going to go to Effect Pivot and center the pivot to the object. That's just so I can properly center it with the vehicle. And then I want to center this. Then you can see that it's gone down a bit, but I want to lower it a little bit more so it covers just the tip of the bottom of the tire. If your model doesn't have tires, just keep the box extending a little bit past the model. Like I said, this is the collision, so players, terrain, other objects in the game will be hitting this box instead of the actual vehicle model itself. So let's edit some of the settings. I want to go a little bit higher. I want to cover the wing, not all of it, but that's good. And I want to get it a little bit thicker at the sides. I think that's good. The front needs to be covered a little bit more. A little bit less. And that's good. As you can see, it's a box you can't see through. If you want to fix that, just right click the box, go to Properties, and then you want to push See-Through, and push OK. And that way we can see the box, and we can also see through it and see our model. And that looks pretty good. Like I said, you just want to have this box surrounding your vehicle, not all the way out, but just enough to cover it. And that's good. And then we want to name this box World Box, and then we'll leave that. We'll hide that since we're done that. And next thing we want to do is we want to create the origin bone. Just make any size. Actually, make a 1 by 1 by 1 box. And you want to go to Effect Pivot Only, Center to Object, turn it off again. And you want to center this box to the world. So right click the bottom arrow, 0, 0, 0. And then as you can see, it's inside the model. That's what we want. This will be used to actually position all the pieces without actually moving individual pieces later on. And then we'll name that origin. And then we'll hide that as well. Right click and then hide selection. We're done with that one. Next thing we want to do is we want to make the wheel bones. VTOL units still need wheel bones. They won't be visible in game, but they're essential to having flight physics. So I'm just going to make a small box. I'm going to make a 0.3 by 0.3 by 3 by 3. Again, you want to center the pivot to the box. There we go. Then you want to take this box and you want to position it at my wheels. If you don't have wheels, just make sure they're below the vehicle itself. So I'm just going to switch my viewport and bring it to the box. The X and the Y, this is the center of the wheel point, and this is the bottom of the wheel point. So we want to center that to the bottom, as close as you can to the bottom of the wheel. So the X, that's good. The X is the bottom of the bone. So, and we'll go again into top, make sure that's centered. Since the model's centered, I'm just going to push 0 on the Y-axis. That should center it. And that's good. Then we want to name this bone wheel P. It can be any number, so I start with 0, 1. That's good. So instead of making a whole new box, I'm just going to click this one and select it and clone, and then I want to push object or copy, and then it automatically assigns a new number, and push OK. And go back in top perspective. Just going to align it to the backbone, or the back wheel, sorry. And then let's get close as possible to the bottom. That's good. Remember, the X is where the wheel touches the ground. That's good. It's not exactly on the position that I want, so let's go back to top and bring it over to the wheel. And that's not a little bit to the side. That's good, I think. Yeah, that's good. And then you want to clone that one. Always make sure it's selected on copy. It automatically assigns a number for you. Push OK. You can move it manually, but what I like to do is I just like to edit the Y and just put a negative, and that should bring it close to the other wheel. As you can see, it didn't do it exactly the way I wanted it, but we can fix that manually. You want to have a little bit on the edges like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's shown like that. Like I said, you don't have to have wheels in your model. If there's no wheels, you could just place them underneath your unit like that, and it should be good. Turn off the grid mode so you can see better. Yep, that's perfect. That's good. Okay, so we're going to hide those for now. And the next thing we want to do is we want to create the weapon bones. So I have my bombs right here. The way I want to shoot them is I want them to fall straight down. So let's create the muzzle bones. This time create a whole new box. Again, I'm going to use the 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. And then we got to fix the pivot, center to object. That's fixed. And then I'm going to get these to the center of my first bombs on the left wing. And that should be good. We'll check it out, see where the position is. I want it to somewhere come like this. This won't really matter for this is just where the projectiles will be created. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as it's close to where the bombs will be falling from. So I kind of want to have it in the center of this pod, rocket pod. I think that's a good position right there. Yeah, that's good. That's good. We'll name that Muzzle A0. Sorry. It's Muzzle A. 0. Muzzle A is the primary fire. 0 is just, you want to make sure you use either 0 or 1. I think Renegade can only handle 0 and 1. If you want more than that, you'd have to use Muzzle B, but we're just using primary fire, so we're not going to go into that today. I'm going to copy it again, but this time I'm going to change this to 0, 1, or sorry, A1. And then I'm going to do the same thing before with the negative on the y-axis, so I'm going to put negative 2.96. And it should have the same position, but it doesn't. But like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's close to what it's like on the other side. That's perfect. Alright. And then I have my 2 muzzles. So bombs will drop from this bone and the bone on the right. And then I think that's it for now. Let me just unhide everything. Right click, unhide all. This is blocking my view for a little bit, so I'm going to hide that one again. And just double check if I have all the bones. Origin. Okay. So now that I have that all done, next part is actually linking everything together so that Renegade can properly understand what everything is and where everything comes from. So the first thing I want to do is select all my vehicle parts. That's the vehicle itself, just the vehicle, not the bones. And then we want to click the link button, which is this button right here. Click it, and then you want to go to this list modifier. It opens up that. We want to select the parent, so we want to select origin and push link, and then disable this, so just push the arrow button here, and then open up the list modifier again. And as you can see, you might have to display subtree, so make sure that's checked off. The origin and then the vehicle parts are all linked to that one bone, the origin bone. Alright. Next thing you want to do is select the wheel bones, and the same thing, link them to the origin. Take the muzzle bones, link them to the origin bone, and take the world box and link that to the origin bone. There we go. Now everything's linked. Next thing is we want to set the settings for W3D, and we're going to change some bone settings for the wheels and the muzzle bones. So we'll get started on the settings for the bones. So I'm going to just select the bones, the world box, and the origin bone, and then hide we're going to select those pieces and hide the vehicle itself. So hide unselected, so the vehicle's gone, it's just the bones and the world box and the origin bone. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set the W3D options. So let's first start with the world box. We want to take off the export transform bone. We want to push hide. Then we want to select the collision options to physical and camera. And that's it for that one, so we can just hide that one. Hide selection. Next one is the origin. You want to deselect everything for that one. So just export geometry and export transform bone. Hide selection. Now the wheel bones. So I'm just going to select all three of those wheel bones. We want to make sure that the export geometry is turned off, and then hide selection. I want to select the muzzle bones, make sure you have export geometry turned off, and then we want to unhide everything again. But since this world box is pretty much done, we'll just hide that one so we can work a little bit better. The next thing we want to do is we want to change the pivot points of the wheels and the muzzle bones. I'll get into that once I start messing with the pivot bones. Alright, so you want to make sure that the wheel bones, the X is facing the front, the Y is facing the left, and the blue Z is facing upwards. And these ones are all good. So I'll hide those ones. Now I want to select the muzzle bones. And the way Renegade works for the muzzle bones, the X axis of these pivots is where the projectile will come from. Since this is a bomber, I don't want them coming straight out. I want them going a little bit downward. So I'm going to click my rotate tool. I'm going to go into the front mode. As you can see, that big red arrow, I want them facing about a 45-degree angle down. So we'll go 40 degrees. So negative 40. And as you can see, they're pointing downwards a little bit. Oh, they're pointing downwards. That's where the projectile will come from, or it'll shoot towards the ground. Since it's a bomber, I kind of want that to happen. So then we can deselect the pivot, and that's done. And that's all for the pivots. So we can unhide everything. Just double check that everything's linked properly. Yep. Oh, and we forgot for the physical properties for the vehicle itself. So we want to select all the jet parts. You might have one piece, but I have different parts to it. So depending on how your model's set up, you just want to select the vehicle parts, not the bones, just the vehicle parts. So here's my vehicle parts. You want to go back to W3D tools. You want to make sure the transform bone is turned off for everything. And you want to make sure that the projectile is set for everything. I have a crossed out or a grayed out two-sided. That's just from my engine flames. I wanted the texture to repeat on the other side. So that doesn't apply to you unless you have something you want to do the same effect. But it's normally just the transform bone and then the projectile settings for the vehicle. Now that we're all done, just make sure everything's unhidden. Double check everything. We got everything. And we want to export. So export it. Usually I go with a V underscore, and then this is a nod unit, so I'll go nod. We'll call it 207. You want to make sure that your W3D name is less than 16 characters, and that it is a very unique name. You don't want to have the same name as something else in another map, or else there will be issues. Let's save that. For vehicle models, you want to save it as a hierarchy model, and then you want to choose smooth vertex meshes and then optimize collision detection. Push OK, and it's exported. So I'm going to quickly load that in W3D. Just make sure that all the parts are correctly shown and that no bones are showing. So there's the model. And everything seems to be alright. There's no bones showing. And we're done. And that's how you create your VTOL unit.